Hello students and parents, hope you're doing well. This is a good example of fractions when we have a whole of something and we're going to break it up into equal parts. So I like to eat Hershey bars. I'm not sure if you like to eat Hershey bars, but a Hershey bar is a good example of how to take one whole of something and break it up into equal parts. Have a blank piece of paper from your spiral notebook in front of you. We're going to be looking at asking the question, what are fractions? This is week 27. Go ahead and put your name over here. Okay, so what are fractions? Just like we ask what are multiplication comparisons, what are fractions? Now I know you've had some fractions in third grade. You've actually had fractions since kindergarten, but they didn't call them fractions. But fractions, the most important thing to remember about fractions is, and probably the most confusing part, is that a fraction is a unit, is one piece, okay? So this would be a fraction. Let's say this is a Hershey bar. Okay, like a big candy bar. And we're starting out with one of them. Now, whenever we say we have one, we always call that a unit, right? This is one Hershey bar. We can have other Hershey bars here. And I don't think you guys would be too confused if you said, okay, Mr. Budinger, this is a whole number Hershey bar. This is a second whole number Hershey bar. So I have now two Hershey bars. So that's one part. Let's go ahead and put a third Hershey bar in here. We're hungry. We're going to share these with our friends, and that's when we get to fractions. Let's say this is another Hershey bar. Okay, so that's three Hershey bars that we have, and we had to pay for all of these at one time. We had to pay for all of these at one time. In other words, when you went to go ahead and purchase these, you commonly set all three of these on the counter, and that's what they charged you for. Now, I'm not going to recommend this in the store because they would probably kick you out of the store. But what if you just want 2.5 Hershey bars with this third one over here? Okay, you cut in half. Okay, so we know about, now this is the confusing part. These are whole number units. So these are called whole, I'm going to use the symbol, number units. My hand's working correctly. I could spell units. Okay. And these are fraction units. And if you remember a couple weeks ago, we had a specific name for these things, and these are called unit fractions. Here's two unit fractions. So just one of these is a unit fraction. So this becomes a little confusing when we talk about whole units and we talk about fraction units. So remember, one of anything is a unit. So for my Hershey's, one Hershey bar is a unit because I only have one of them. And here's 3 units here for Hershey bars. Now if I take one and divide it in half, now I'm starting to talk about fraction units or unit fractions. Here's 1 unit fraction. That's one of the halves. So that can be a little confusing. So I want you to kind of keep in mind that units can be whole numbers and units can also be fractions. But it's only the first one that is called the unit. So this is our first unit, okay, and it measures everything else after that. This is our half unit, or our unit fraction, and it measures everything else after that if we continue with halves. So kind of keeping connected to what we did with our circular fractions. Let's say I eat this piece. Okay, again, I'm not recommending this in the store, but let's say you eat half of this Hershey bar. You open it up. Your parents get very mad at you. Grandma's like upset. Someone from the staff at Walmart comes over and says, "You can't do that. You haven't paid for it yet." But you made a mistake. You were hungry. You needed chocolate, and you ate it. So now instead of having a whole unit, we now have half of a unit. Okay? So how much, if you went to the counter and you gave him this Hershey bar and this Hershey bar, and this one here, okay, no longer existed because you divided it in half and you ate half of that, how many Hershey bars would you have to pay for? Well, you would obviously have to pay for this whole one here, but if they said, okay, we're just going to charge you for half, you would have this one whole number right here, plus another whole number right here. So these are units. Let me put that in the middle. Plus this half. So what would that look like at the end here? If we were to, put an equal sign over here, what would this equal? Well, it'd equal 1 plus 1. That's easy enough. That's 2 plus this half. So you would have 2 and 1/2 Hershey bar. Okay? So whole numbers and fractions can go together. And this fraction here, we divide it into half because the half is like the largest fraction. It's the easiest to see. But in reality, things can be divided up into all kinds of different fractions. So down here, now I have never done this before. I don't know how many fractions there are in a Hershey bar. But in most cases, they divide the Hershey bar up so you can take out little pieces. A half of a large Hershey bar, that is a lot to eat. So set this aside once you're done and watch the video with me and let's find out. There is a mildly sweet dark chocolate Hershey bar. They all come in the same size when you buy this big one. Let's open this up. Find out how many fractions. So this is one Hershey bar. So this is just this one. So here we just did a little addition of whole numbers and fractions. We're just going to look at this one Hershey bar. Maybe I should have drawn this a little bit further down. Let's do this. I hope you got an eraser. Mr. Buddington has a big eraser. And it's slowly getting smaller. Let's do this. Let's divide our paper in half and say, okay, this is one note. And this is our second notes down here. And we're going to have this very large Hershey bar. And we're going to do an experiment. And we're going to check it out. Experiments always answer the unknowns. So I don't know how many divisions they have in here. Maybe more than we're going to cover in 4th grade, but let's go ahead and check it out. All right. So I get to eat this later on, which I'm kind of excited about. Okay, how many divisions is that? If you notice on the back side, it is one whole number. And on the front side, it is divided into equal parts. Okay, so we started with 1. What would this fraction actually be? Now, again, it gets a little confusing. We can count all the parts, but you know how we had arrays? This is an array, but it's a fractal array. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 down here, and 1, 2, 3, 4 up here. Wow, that's kind of interesting. It's a 4 by 4, so that means this is divided into 16 pieces. So our Hurshey bar is divided into 4 going this way. Oh, now a good way of doing 4 is divide it in half and then divide those 2 halves. So we're going to divide this in half. I'm going to divide that part in half. Okay, see how it comes out 1, 2, 3, 4, pretty even. And then I'm going to divide this in half. That's going to be a little bit harder. And then divide that in half. I kind of messed up on that one. Let's see if I can do that a little bit better. Slightly better. I'm going to leave it at that. So that's a model of our Hurshey bar here. So what would our fractions be? Well, the denominator, we could put a fraction bar in all of these. What would our unit fraction be for this Hurshey bar? It's way beyond what we're normally going to use because we're only going to go up to 12s. Oh, I think I got some chocolate right there. Okay, the bottom of the fraction is called the denominator. And that's how many equal parts that we have. All these little pieces on the Hurshey bar are the same size. So that's the equal parts that we have. How many equal parts do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Now we already did some multiplication to come up with that. But that's the parts that we have, and that's your denominator. And we're going to create unit fractions for this Hurshey bar. Even though we aren't going to go as high as 16ths. You see 16ths quite commonly. Obviously in Hurshey bars, sometimes on tape measures. And this piece right here is our unit fraction. This is 1 of the 16th. So we can go ahead and put our unit fractions in here. And we had done some math where we added unit fractions together. Okay. Let's say Mr. Budinger tears off this piece. Okay, I'm going to save that for later. That's for me. And we have this left. Now remember, we're going to show that as blocking out that section of it. This section is going to get blocked out. Now you can do this for any fractions. We're going to go up to hundredths of dividing something into hundredths and tens. Those are our special fractions. But we aren't going to do that just yet because those are very large fractions. That's a lot of divisions. Okay, so how many 16ths do we have here? Well, we have 4 times 3. That's 12. So this model now equals 12 16th of our original whole number. We started with a whole Hurshey bar and we took some of that away and we have 12 16ths. So our denominator is parts. I guess I'll leave this consistent. I'll put a capital D down here. So our denominator is how many divisions. Okay, there was 16 divisions. And how many parts? Now, we can have a unit fractions, or we can add these unit fractions together and come up with a number for the numerator. So this is the numerator. So denominator is divisions. And the numerator are parts, equal parts. So since we're talking about divisions, we're going to divide this into smaller parts. Our numerator tells us how many of those parts we have remaining. So in this case, we start out with 16 parts. Okay. I took 4 of those parts away, and now we have a new fraction, 12 16ths. So I hope this was not too confusing, but I'm going to have my Hershey chocolate right now, and we'll continue in the next video.